Hello, everyone. So today I'm here with Miranda. Welcome to the channel, Miranda. And
Hi.
today we are going to talk about experiences and really what the gods have taught us. In our own different paths, we work with different gods a little bit, but there's a lot of overlying experiences and understandings that we've received from the gods.
Mhm.
So today that's going to be our discussion. And so, Miranda, which gods do you want to talk about in this discussion? And what have they taught you? I mean, you don't have to go deep into different lessons they taught you, and you don't have to share something you're not comfortable with sharing. But if you want to give something to the audience as far as what certain gods have, what they have taught you, then feel free to go ahead and do that now, and just let us know what you think.
So, primarily throughout my studies, I have been more in tune with Athena, and more so in her aspect of guardianship and leadership, protection, wisdom, and pretty much all around being able to sit down and run a scenario through multiple different viewpoints from my own mind in order to make the best decision for whatever situation I'm approaching. And through that, she has really helped in teaching me a lot, especially about jealousy and um, not being petty, not being vindictive towards people who have done me wrong, and really kind of helped me see that everybody deals with pretty much the same things. It just depends on whether or not you personalize it or you've learned to let it go.
Do you you mentioned at one time that meditation works well in helping you to basically hear the messages of the gods. Do you feel like in order to hear the gods and to understand what they're trying to tell you that you have to meditate, or do you think that it's a useful way to just clear out all the extra chatter in our minds? What's your views on that?
Um, See, that one's tricky because with meditation, it allows me to, in really, really hard times and I'm just cluttered, it allows me to open that void and to allow her the chance or the opportunity, if she's available, to actually come and sit with me. Then there's other times where I don't need the meditation and I can just call on her if I already feel she's there.
Okay, so do you have a statue of Athena, or do you feel like working with sigils is also effective, or maybe both are
Uh,
effective?
Currently I don't have any statues. I had to stop my practices for a little bit because of different personal reasons, but I have always worn with pride one of my Athenian owls, one of her symbols of the owl on the branch. And it just, I walk with her. She's on my legs. She steadies my pace. She steadies my foot. She keeps me grounded and brings me the strength I need to keep pushing when I don't think that I can.
That makes sense. Is Athena the only is Athena the only goddess that you work with in the Greek pantheon, or did you feel especially drawn to her, or do you work with anything else in the Greek pantheon?
Um, I would say that I more work with her solely
Yeah,
rather than any of the others, but that's just because of my fighter spirit that I feel more in tuned with her. But if she can't give me an answer or she's unable to guide me somewhere, I will hear her guide me towards who I need to speak with. There have been times when I was having a really, really, really tough struggle and she flat out told me, hey, this is not something I'm equipped with. Please go speak to my sister Medusa.
that makes sense.
And the lessons I had to learn from her were a little. it was somewhat frightening because of the way it approached me
Yeah.
and the myths and the legends behind the type of Gorgon she was. And
Isn't Medusa? Isn't she the only half human Gorgon, or is that as far as is she's different from the other ones, right?
see, I'm not really sure because every tale, every story about them alters and changes depending on which viewpoint you're examining it from. You know, some people see Medusa only as the goddess of vengeance who would turn her, what's the word I'm looking for? Her enemies. She would only turn her enemies to stone. They classify her as cold and heartless and vengeful and petty, but they fail to realize that she also held the same attributes of Aphrodite, and she was actually very loving. She was very.
I think there's a lot of ancient propaganda going on there.
There it is.
We find that across multiple pantheons because you can kind of tell where the propaganda is and where because so much of the information is lost, and a lot of people who would have connected to the beings that are slandered, they either didn't write it down or they were shunned and their works didn't survive, or they were just kind of like
they documented what was going on out of envy or out of pain or out of rage, and I don't really think that's fair to them. Like, see, Medusa, she had to teach me how to have a strong heart and a strong wall put up in place before giving myself completely to a lover or to a partner, because I'm so steadfast in, oh my God, here's a chance. There's somebody that likes me. This could be going great, and I fall too quickly, and then I'm in a puddle on the floor crying, going, why does this hurt so much? And it was because I didn't put up a stone wall, I put up a strong one.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I actually have a little bit of a curveball. If you had to, you just started working with Odin, right? I mean, fairly recently.
Yes, very recently.
Very recently. I'm not sure if you can get a real vibe from him yet, but you know, the Romans compared Odin or Woden because they encountered the Germanic, you know, Woden. They compared him to Mercury, which is also Hermes in the Greek pantheon. I'm not sure if you have worked with Hermes at all, but I was just wondering your opinion as far as the nature of Hermes or Mercury in relation to Odin, because I think that there's some truth there. I don't think that they're the same thing. I just think that there's some truth that there is a connection to the mercurial energy of Woden or Odin, and you know I do think that they're slightly different beings. I'm a pagan who believes that beings are separate. It's not just a bunch of names for one thing, just a slightly different frequency. So if you had to compare Odin to something, would you say Hermes? Would you say Mercury like the Greeks and the Romans, or would you not make that leap?
See, I don't really know too much about that to be able to give a proper or educated answer for that. But working with Mercury's energy personally, just as a polarity and a battery cell within itself, I do think that Hermes and Woden probably do vibe off of the same connection, because I'd like to feel that they come from the same central point, because what connects them is Mercury. And what Mercury is known for, it really helps push out who they operate and vibe with on a frequency best, compared to, say, a deity that vibes more in tune with Jupiter or vibes and is connected through Venus or Saturn. So I think as a homestead, they're compatible and they're relatable, but to what they have to offer their students and those who ask them for guidance and walk with them, they vibe kind of on the same energy path. So it definitely opens up more doors for them.
That makes sense. And just on the same note, a lot of people will contact me about Kali and not Kali Ma. And I think that a lot of people don't think that there's a difference, but there is a slight difference in frequency. Kali
Okay.
is a Kali is a very vast frequency, but there's forms of this frequency. Kali Ma is a very different energy than the vast energy that is Kali. So I'm constantly explaining to people that, okay, I can't tell you how to work with Kali, but I can tell you how to work with Kali Ma. I can tell you how to tune into this frequency, but not the frequency you talk about in relation to Kali. So there is a difference of frequency, but there's also that similarity where you have that baseline, like you said. You have
Hmm.
that mercurial baseline that Woden might be very much on the level with, but just slightly different offshoot, if you will. And
Hmm.
it's strange because we're constantly, reconstructing within ourselves so much of what is lost because this is an ascending age. We're starting to get closer to the gods again, so we're picking up the pieces, and these forces are so vast. It's we have to be specific, but also open to the idea that, okay, maybe these energies are connected, this or that. So if we're moving on from Athena, is there another god or goddess that you'd like to talk about as far as something that you were taught by another one?
Honestly, I'd have to say Arachnia, even though she's
I
not
don't know
deep.
anything
One of,
about her at all.
okay, so Arachnia was never really deemed one of the goddesses. She was more of the god's weaver. She was the one who sat down and did their clothing and did the carpentry for like carpets and murals and stuff like that. And she was the storyteller. So if, say, Odin needed a passageway somewhere and he needed to get there as quickly as possible with as much information on his side, he would seek out Arachnia so she could weave that passage for them. And as I have shared with you in the past, there's the song of the goddess and the weaver. And that's when I had to learn really about true storytelling. So, and it helped me become more and stay more of an honest person because there's weaving a story that has truth in it, that's tight knit, there's no holes in it, there's nothing to puncture through it. And then there's weaving a web of lies, which is going to be loose. There's going to be holes in it. There, you can go in and unravel anything quickly. And how I learned to deal with the jealousy and the envy was because of how Athena pretty much like stepped down and said, F you, Arachnia. She was just like, hey, Arachnia, I got a challenge for you. Tell everybody the stories of all the gods and put it out there. Leave nothing out. And then Arachnia told all the secrets of Athena. And that was when Athena got jealous and
Yeah,
angry because she was like, I'm in everybody else, not me. Like, leave me out of this. I just want to know everything about everyone else.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so, out of jealousy, out of rage, out of pettiness, Athena cast Arachnia into the eight-legged weaver and broke her down into billions of pieces that is known today as the spider,
Yeah.
the weaving one. Very deadly if you cross the wrong one.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That makes sense.
that gave me a lot of love and strength to kind of learn a little bit about Arachnia's story. Because as pagans, as Wiccans, eclectics, traditionalists, there's something to learn from all of them and not just the deities, but even the ones that the deities had to go to for help. I mean, look at Zeus and Hercules.
Yeah.
I mean, Hercules is a demigod, but there was a point in time when the gods needed Hercules' help to take down the Titans.
And then this is actually a very interesting point that I think is hard for a lot of people to understand because we have in the Iliad and the Odyssey. We have in the Odyssey. There's a lot of truths that you really have to dig deep into in the Iliad and the Odyssey. But we have Hercules. It's written that both he ascended to the realm of the gods, but also
Mm-hmm.
Odysseus sees his shade in Hades, and his shade is, has a bow and arrow, and there's constantly this a number of things around him trying to run away, and he's always shooting. So we have this idea that, in a way, Hercules was split. This is something I encountered many months
But that's
ago,
with
but
everybody.
yeah,
But you have to think about that. That's with everybody. We all have an ascended higher being, but there's always part of us that's going to touch down and walk with Hades, who is really just a ferryman.
when we die, this is why this is one of the reasons I believe when we die, if we don't completely merge ourselves and make a proper spiritual progress, we are fragmented. So a part of us might go somewhere, a part of us might go somewhere else, and maybe that's just how it is, or maybe that's because of this reason or that reason. But I really think that Hercules, for instance, he was fragmented, and I think that most of us will be fragmented, and different pieces of us will go for different parts. Because a human being, I don't think of us as just one thing. I think that we're a bunch of things combined, and that's what the gods reveal to us over time. The gods, I guess you could say, are beings that are more whole. They're a wholeness that we're trying to reach out to. Hercules, he's half mortal, half god, so that fragmentation is obvious. But I think that the gods are more the whole beings that we are aspiring to be. And really, we're on a spiritual journey to get there as best we can. Would you agree or disagree on that?
See, that kind of makes me want to bring in other religions and to kind of explain that. But for me personally, not a lot of people give Hades or say Lucifer, Satan, whatever title you want to give him, his due justice. Because we are fragmented. We are empty. And yes, that's why we reach out to an ascended being. We reach out to somebody who's up higher without taking time to acknowledge what's below. Because we need the ferryman. When we die, that ferryman is supposed to reconnect us so we can make a whole passing.
I think it's important to acknowledge at this point that Hades and even hell in the Norse pantheon are completely different than the Christian idea of hell.
Exactly.
They're very, because hell in the Norse pantheon, there's many layers of it, and most of the layers aren't actually bad. You don't actually suffer there. It's more of a place for recycling consciousness, and really for most people. And it isn't. Most of the time, it's a place of rest. And in Hades, the Greeks believe that the vast majority of people go to Hades. It isn't just a very few people go to the Elysian Fields. It is, but in Christianity, it becomes a very dual place. You have a bad place and a good place.
Yeah.
And the more we work with God, the more that we realize that it's way more nuanced than that. It's more complicated. And I think that Christianity is lacking in nuance when it comes to that.
See, with Christianity, one of the things that I had to learn in my studies, because of who my teacher was, I was taught by a very wise individual, a very powerful individual. And before I was allowed to learn anything under him about paganism or Wicca, I had to dedicate studies to Buddhism, Judaism, Hinduism, Christianity, Catholicism. So there's an actual understanding, and there is minor relations between all the different religions that are out there. But I do think that there's just more than that one realm below the surface, because there's a lot of people who, take the term near-death experience. I had a near-death experience. People who have died for 5 minutes and have come back. They hit that first level and they met somebody who reconnected them to their journey and said, hey, this was your purpose. You've served your purpose thus far, but you're not done. So here's a little bit more wisdom, and when you go back, we want you to share this. We want you to make acknowledgement of this. In Christianity, they call it a miracle. He died and he rose from the dead. That's a miracle. No, there was somebody down there saying, hey, thanks for the visit. Get your ass out of here.
Basically. And near-death experiences are something that they're just so varied. And the Christian
I've
faith,
had a couple personally.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I wish we could get into that. We just don't have the time.
Yeah.
That'll be another video though. But I would like to say that, in Christianity, near-death experiences, we hear a lot of Christian stories of going to hell, come back. And, that doesn't mean that it's not legitimate. It's just that they have a different frequency that they're attuned to.
Yeah.
But when there's also just thousands of stories recorded, I forget what university actually put hundreds of them together, but of people remembering their past lives. So my personal belief is that there is a multiverse, and we're constantly going up and down trying to figure out what's going on. And
so maybe that's what the different levels are. It's just you're leaving one timeline and you're jumping into another.
Yeah, and I do think that people tend to be gravitated towards certain planets and universes. But of course, we're all going to realizing ourselves. But there's just so many even childhood experiences that people have said, okay, yeah, I've lived these other lives, described this and this and this. And my favorite one is a child who's describing his father. He called himself, this is like a 6-year-old. He described himself as James number 5. And his dad's like, why are you calling yourself James number 5? He's like, I'm on my 5th James. I've been James 4 other times. And then he described in World War II where a plane went down in the ocean where he was a fighter pilot. And that plane wasn't found yet. And then they actually went and looked. They found that plane that a James had died in. So, I mean, that's just my favorite story, just because they actually found the plane that they didn't know of before.
Yeah.
But
I had an heirloom that followed me for a while.
Yeah.
So when I was a child, I was learning about proper meditation and how to use pretty much the cone of energy based from the earth and shot to the universe, and how to be more receptive of what was coming through. And I found out that in 2 different time periods, I was actually accused and convicted of witchcraft. And by the time I was 16, I was hung in one, and the second one I was burned. And I felt it in my meditation. I was just stuck in it, and I felt the rope being put around my neck again, and my breath escaping me, and not being able to breathe, and the tightness of it. And I felt like I was having a panic attack because it felt so real. And then the second one, it was like the bottom of my back, it just started burning, like somebody held a lighter to me. And it washed over my body. Oh, shoot. And I couldn't help but to let out like a mild scream because it hurt, but I couldn't tell if I was going crazy. And
that makes sense. I mean, it's an experience that you're remembering, but you're feeling it physically, but it's not happening to you right now. So that must
exactly. And there was a ring, and I think this might be my 3rd passage through. I'm not sure. But after I turned 16 in this life, the ring that followed me, I haven't seen since. And it had a little gold band, and on the top of it was an amber jewel with kind of like plated gold filigree embroidered around it. And I remember I would find it, and I would start asking people in my family, where did this come from? Where did this come from? Who gave this to me? I've never seen this before. Why is it here? And then I would lose it.
Yeah.
Like I would go camping like hundreds of miles away from home, and I would lose it. Somewhere out in the woods, I would lose it. And then I would come home and it would be sitting on my pillow.
That's an amazing experience. I think
it was trippy.
That's definitely a message that you're supposed to receive. I guess it's up to you to decipher it. But before
I made it to 27, so whatever the message was, I heard it.
It worked.
I heard it.
That's awesome.
Because I haven't seen it since. On my 17th birthday, that ring completely disappeared, and I haven't seen it since.
Oh, wow. See, that's another video. I'm going to have to wrap up this video
Mm-hmm.
because it's getting a little long, and just because I'm uploading from my phone, I got to keep it a certain length. But we'll keep on talking. But hey, thank you everybody for listening. Thank you for Miranda for being here. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, shoot them down in the comment section below on YouTube. I'm sure we'll both take a look at them. And I hope to see all of you on my channel in the future.